888-267-22Jiggy.
Hey, Jiggy, what's happening, man? Reminds me of that David Bowie song. Jiggy, play guitar. Jeff, it's a great name, man. Thanks so much for having me on the show.
Presenting
I'm Mike Massey, and you can catch me on Jiggy and see a few of my trick shots there. Thanks very much.
Jiggy Jaguar.
I never knew what freedom was until I saw you lose yours.
That is the world-famous Jiggy Jaguar radio broadcast, coast to coast and border to border today here on TuneIn, iTunes, Radio Loyalty, Stitcher, and, of course, iHeartRadio. Oh, today's going to be a fun one. We've got Don Mazzella, Dan Perkins, IQ Al Rizzoli, and, of course, our scheduled guest going to be with us here in a few moments. However, this is going to be a fun topic. Let's go to the...
and 100 people were stopped temporarily.
As we join them in mid conversation, we have Dan Perkins, best-selling author, with us today. Our good friend Don Mazzella, our newspaper man, and of course IQ Al Rizzoli, the author of Lifting the Veil. And of course on the telephone we have our guest, but we'll get to our guest here in a few seconds. IQ, I discovered something over the weekend, and it is, I don't know how to, I know how to take this, but, and I'm going to get your thoughts on this, but there is a gentleman, I use that term very loosely, who has a blog on the internet, and he goes by the name of Miko Hayes. And, of course, most listeners to this radio broadcast know Miko. He's kind of a smear merchant. He's a guy who, I think it was last year or the year before, wrote some article on Facebook about me being a racist and all sorts of other things. Which is interesting, because if you watch the Sunday radio program, I've got more black people in my house than most people have ever met in their life. But besides all that, Miko has written a post on social media. Half of the people screaming about ban Muslims don't even understand it's religion, not a race, let alone the differences inside the Muslim religion. Let's remember, guys, we are the same country that voted to bomb Ar-Akbar last year. You know, the imaginary place from Aladdin. # know your supposed enemy. And Miko, I don't think is much of a, well, I don't think he's a journalist, for one thing, but I don't think he knows the Muslim religion as well as our guest, IQ Al Rizzoli. And so for that, IQ, give me your thoughts on this social media post, because I sent it to you over the weekend, and you were like, you want my comments now, or you want to wait till the radio show? So, jump in there, my friend.
Before I obliterate Miko Hayes, I have come to the simple conclusion that the United States has at least 63 million dysfunctional followers of Hillary Clinton.
Okay.
And Donald Trump does not have a swamp to drain, but a sewer, because it's a functional ecosystem, but not a sewer. Okay. Now, do you want me to go after this, Miko?
Yes, because for one thing, and I'll give all the listeners who are tuning in here, possibly for the first time, IQ Al Rizzoli is the authority on the subject of the Quran and the Muslim religion and everything to do with the Middle East. So, IQ, jump in there and explain your thoughts and give us your response to this Miko character's social media post.
What I'm going to talk about, I'm addressing actually to Miko Hayes himself.
Okay.
So,
yes.
So I'm saying to him, so you pretend to know your supposed enemy by deceiving, misinforming, or twist facts and reality to suit whatever perverted agenda that you have. Let me point out to you how utterly wrong you are. Take an example. Islam is a race, not a religion, because it is a belief system, a cult belief system, the cult of Muhammad. Because most assuredly, Allah is not, I repeat, Allah is not the same as the God of Jesus, Moses, and Abraham. So already I obliterated his religion. It is also obvious that because of your political correctness, idiocy, you are more concerned about perceived legalities than the security and the well-being of the American people. Carter stopped all Iranians from coming in or staying in the United States of America, and not many thought this was either immoral or unjust. By the way, every country that Donald Trump listed as persona non grata is a dysfunctional Islamic theocracy, Sharia compliant, or shredding itself, in fact, to pieces. And you would not mind that terrorists would come from these countries without proper investigation. You're very conveniently ignoring also that the mass murderers in Orlando were vetted, but still slaughtered Americans. Finally, it is crystal clear that you know as much about Muhammad's Quran and Islam as a pig's knowledge of the science of personal hygiene. Because
Wow.
you would have found out that no Muslim can ever be loyal to the American Constitution or the American people because they are not Sharia, Allah Sharia compliant. Case closed. Back to you, sir.
Okay, well, and as always on this broadcast, we will if Mika would like to join us some week on the program to have a debate with IQ, since he seems to be a authority on the subject of Islam and the Muslim faith. I would love to have that discussion here, and I know
Jim,
IQ would as well. But Dan, give us your response to all this.
I want to weigh in on this.
Yes.
Yeah,
Go.
Just want to make a point.
Okay.
I want to make actually 2 points. Last week, when we go tomorrow, we have here on Sanibel Island a program called The Forum, and they invite prominent people to come in and talk about all kinds of issues. Last week was a political reporter from the New York Times, and he writes a column twice a week. And he was talking about what's going on in the world and Mr. Trump's and what Mr. Trump is not doing. And he's talking, first he talked about how bad Trump was.
Yes.
Then he went on to talk about the editing process. And that the delay that Mr. Trump was absurd. And I couldn't get recognized from the floor, but the point that I wanted to make to follow up on IQ, in the vetting process of bringing a person into the United States, what is very important is the collection of the data about the person, their political beliefs, their record in terms of whether they're a criminal or not. That has to come through a dialogue with the government. If you look at the countries that Mr. Trump has basically barred for at least some period of time, we have no way of gathering any reliable information about possible refugees from those countries. There is, for example, no government in Yemen. How could we ever possibly get any information? Syria is not our friend. We can't get any information, and on and on and on. Most of these states are, as IQ points out, in such a state of flux, you could not get reliable information. What Trump is saying is, if you can't get reliable information, don't let him in. Point 2, this is what really shocked me, what he said. He said that the line in the sand that Barack Obama drew was the biggest mistake of his presidency that cost millions of lives, and he's personally responsible for it. I thought that was amazing that a Democrat liberal would have criticized his president, that the worst thing that he did in his presidency was to draw a line in the sand and not follow up to allow millions of people to be murdered. And I thought that was a pretty profound statement. And the audience was quite shocked that this liberal reporter, who would attack their president. But it's true. And Trump has said we should never draw the line in the sand. A lot of people have said we should never draw the line in the sand. And the refugee problem, I mean, this gentleman was trying to, and you would have loved it. This guy was trying to tell the audience what a good job Europe is doing assimilating these Muslims into their culture.
Mm-hmm.
But then he talks about,
Wow.
well, you know, the French, their solution was move them out of Paris. Never let them come in Paris.
Yeah.
And Italy's doing something similar in Spain. So he couldn't find, when asked, well, what country's doing the best job of assimilating these refugees? He didn't have an answer because there's no answer. So I think that I didn't read the piece that you're talking about, but IQ I think is absolutely right. But also the rest of the story is we're not prepared to deal with the kind of terrorism if we don't have the knowledge about the people.
Now,
So
Don,
I agree with you.
Don, do you have any type of thoughts on this before we take our first break and get our guest on?
Well, thank you. But I was just going to say, you know, the Tet Offensive in Vietnam was a complete American victory. Yet it was a defeat because it was how it was reported here in the United States. And exactly the same thing is happening. I was sent a joke yesterday by someone, and a story about how Donald Trump was meeting with the Pope.
Yes.
And the Pope's cap dropped into water, and Trump said, "Don't worry about it." So he walked on water, got the cap, and brought it back. And sure enough, the next day, you know what the headline was in the papers? Donald Trump can't swim.
That's awesome.
But the point I'm trying to make is,
Yes.
no matter what,
Excellent point. You don't need more than that.
it was sent to me. I can't claim credit for it. But the point I'm trying to make in all this is, this is finally the New York Times at 2:30 this afternoon finally moved the story and said, you know, there are people here in the United States that think it was a good idea what he did. Finally, after all of these days. So my answer back is Donald Trump is doing exactly what he said he would do. If we have a politician or an elected official that's doing what he said he'd do in the campaign, and the newspaper and the media is still complaining. That's all I have to say.
Well,
Just one more thing, Jim,
yes,
for your break.
yes, go.
One quick comment. Weekend, there was an attack in Yemen where 3 SEALs were injured and 1 was killed. Okay?
Yes.
And the headline in the paper was, Trump has his first casualty.
Wow.
Trump has his first casualty. So we're going to start body counting again like they did under George Bush, and they never did under Barack Obama. Take your break.
Thank you, Dan. We're going to take our first break. When we come back, we've got our guest on the line, and as I mentioned earlier, Miko Hayes, the Daily Hayes, is invited on this broadcast anytime he would like to have a chat with IQ Al Rizzoli and Dan Perkins and Don Mazzella, and he knows how to get a hold of me. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to put these gentlemen on hold on Skype, and